All right, we'll move right into consent agenda.
I move to confirm the consent agenda.
Second.
Got a motion to accept the agenda. We got a second. So Deputy Mayor Marks made the motion, and then we got a second by Councilmember Moore, and we have a hand raised, and we got Councilmember Tosta. Go ahead.
Mayor Mata, I'd like to amend the consent agenda. I'd like to remove consent agenda item E and place it on our business agenda as item C.
Councilmember Tasta, just for clarification, I believe that the way we're trying to do it is that when we move it from the consent agenda, we just talk about it right after you guys.
After the consent agenda, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so that's we're gonna remove E, and this is an amendment to remove E from the original motion. Do we got a second on that?
Actually, Mayor Mata, I think any individual council member can remove an item from the consent agenda. It doesn't take.
Yeah, I think we can discuss you right. Okay, go ahead. So we got to remove E. All right. We got that out there. Any other council member? Okay, hearing no other council member. All those in favor of removing E this is from the agenda.
Yeah, we don't have to vote on it.
Sorry, so the motion would be all those in favor of approving the consent agenda minus item E.
Yeah, so there's so for verification, E is the only one that's going to get pulled, correct? Okay. So all on the original motion, all those in favor of the original motions except for pulling out E, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand or raising your hand or your sign. Okay, that passes unanimously. All right, let's go into E now. Go ahead, Councilmember Costa.
So the reason I asked for this is because of the, I would say, significant and substantial comments we have had on this in the last 2 weeks since council had a discussion on it. And I think it's worth that. And I think some of the questions that have been raised, we've seen answers to some of those questions, but not all of them in the materials that have been provided by DESC. So I think there are continuing issues here around approval of this resolution in accepting DESC as a program as a pilot in our affordable housing demonstration pilot. My sense is that most of members of the community do see a need for this. They are concerned about the location, and they are concerned about the concessions that potentially DESC will receive as part of this, that our business community has to comply with in the downtown area. And it raises significant economic concerns for our businesses. It raises concerns about the use of the property and the impact that property will have on all of the surrounding properties, from not because of the residents, but because of parking, because of lack of public space, because of lack of commercial space, all of the things that we would expect any entity locating in our downtown area to provide. So I am concerned that we are hearing the majority of the comments we are hearing are expressing concerns about this project in our downtown core.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, City Attorney.
Is there going to be a motion?
I move that we do not approve resolution number 457.
So that's a motion to not approve. Do I hear a second? There's no second.
I'll second.
So I got a motion and a second. I know you already spoke on your motion, and that was my oversight, but go ahead, Councilmember Tosta, if you're gonna say anything else.
I've said.
I'll recognize any other council member. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Marks, and then I'll recognize Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Mata. Something that I really love about the Affordable Housing Demonstration Program is that it does remove
a lot of the red tape in place to place affordable housing within our community. More than that, it calls on us to be creative in where we place it. That's the whole point behind it, which I think was really innovative and that other cities have started to look to Burien about. Looking at, it doesn't have to just be in an area zone for housing, single family or multifamily. It can be in places like our downtown core, in commercial zones, everywhere except for industrial, I believe is the one place where we said when we put this into effect a year or 2 years ago, I think, that these projects weren't welcome. So not approving this because all of a sudden the concern is there because, not having it in the downtown core. We addressed this. We addressed it when we talked about having it in the commercial zone and that being something that we approved. And I am very much in favor of a program that can come in and build 95 out of the 144 units that we need in a way that does not cause Burien to have to fork up that overhead cost to get it in place. The statements that there will be additional demands for service are magical forecasting at best. It is not known that that is going to be the case. So I am in favor of this project. I'll be voting no on this motion, and I encourage council members to stick to their previous votes from before and vote your conscience if you need to, but to still be able to push this project forward.
All right, go ahead, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. So right off the bat, I believe that we have representatives from DESC here present tonight. So if there are questions that have gone unaddressed that council members would like to ask, I believe they are, as my understanding anyway, that they are more than happy to answer those questions. Obviously, they've been responsive every time we've called them for questioning before. They've hosted so many public meetings for discourse. And so if you have questions, if anybody here tonight has questions, then I see no problem with asking them if you have new questions that have not already been addressed, because we should be respectful of the time of council members and representatives from DESC and the public. That said, I have not seen a new issue arise that is in any way pertinent to whether this qualifies as part of the affordable housing demonstration program. I heard the concerns of the public. I have heard the concerns that vary from potentially valid concerns to, as Deputy Mayor Marks put it, magical forecasting. The assumptions, the guesswork, and quite frankly, what seems to me to be blatant fear-mongering. And there is not a single argument that I have seen made yet that validates any reasoning to deny this project. It is and has been validated as qualifying for affordable housing demonstration program. They have jumped through all the hoops that council set as meeting those qualifications. They have not failed in a single instance. We created the affordable housing demonstration program specifically to enable building places to house people that may require deviations to make those housing units or houses more efficient at serving individual populations. Issues like parking, when we're talking about a population that doesn't own cars, doesn't seem like a valid reason to turn this opportunity away. When we have heard things like their staff will be provided with free bus passes. Issues like whether they have outdoor recreational space. When we're talking about a population that currently lives outdoors, seems so callous and tone deaf to the actual situation before us. And the idea that DESC, it will somehow import 95 people from outside of Burien to house them here and ignore every person in Burien who currently needs housing, when they have repeated over and over and over again that they fully intend to prioritize Burien's population. They fully intend to do outreach here. They have contacted organizations that operate here. We have heard from leadership for organizations that operate here like LEAD, who work with these populations supporting this project. We have heard from organizations that serve this population who say they know for a fact they have identified over 200 individuals that live unhoused on our streets. So we know we have a sizable enough population that could be served by these units. The idea that some fanciful creation in somebody's mind that this isn't good enough for all of these tiny, minuscule, nitpicking details it's appalling to me, quite frankly. And I don't know the minds of my fellow council members, but I know I have to sleep at night. And knowing our people are out on the streets in the cold, suffering, unsafe, at risk of all kinds of danger, that's what keeps me up at night. And the idea of turning down this opportunity to give people with disabilities who have been chronically homeless, sometimes for decades, turning down this opportunity and leaving them out on our street unhoused, endangered, I couldn't sleep at night if I did that. And I certainly will not condone such a thing. So I would like to propose an amendment to the current motion. I would like to propose that we do approve this project. So I'm happy to provide the phrasing for the clerk if that's necessary, but it's simple change from do not to do. Approve this because they have met every qualification, and we have an obligation to serve our public. And that is not just the people who speak from a place of privilege from their warm homes. That is the people who do not have a voice because they don't have a phone to call in to a council meeting. They don't have a computer to Zoom in.
Point of
And they
order,
don't have
Mayor
the mental
Mata.
health care
Point of
treatment.
order.
Oh.
This is ranting.
Oh, am I?
and Not necessary.
Oh, I think it's completely relevant. So I would appeal that point of order. I appeal that.
Councilmember Moore, please.
Okay, I made my amendment. That's what it is, but
Second.
Before we get into amendments, okay? These are two different motions here. One is to not approve and the other one is to approve.
it's
So
an amendment.
Councilmember Moore, I am going to get clarification from our legal counsel. Okay, and then once I get clarification, then I'll know how to move forward. Go ahead, City Attorney.
Mayor, I'm actually checking to see if this is possible to offer a motion that is the exact opposite of the initial motion. So it may take me a moment to see if I don't know if I'm looking for a negative or not, but I'm not sure that that's possible, but I need to check, so I'm sorry.
So last time I checked, and Garmin, I believe actually you cited it to me, but so you might know this. But last time I checked, as long as the amendment is germane to the motion, it can be made. It just cannot be made if it is not germane. But I could be wrong, and so I think that we should
Remember
definitely
that.
wait.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I certainly remember that. I'm just trying to figure out, germane is one thing, the complete opposite motion and saying that it's an amendment, I'm not sure that fits, so I'm going to see if I can find something in Robert's rules that's.
I have a matter that may be relevant to this. City Attorney Newsom, if it is preferable to you, I am happy to rephrase that to be a substitute motion, if that is easier for us to digest, which should be within Robert's rules. So if that's easier, then I'm happy to do that.
I have not heard of a substitute motion before, so I wouldn't know about that.
So here's the thing, okay? I let Councilmember Tosta speak on the motion before she made a motion. I've let you speak on the motion, and now you want to, after you speak on the motion, now you want to make a new motion, which would be out of order under, Robert's Rules of Order, because you already spoke on the motion. Okay, you didn't say I want to make an, Mr. Chair, I want to make an amendment. You didn't say that, but I said I've done that for Councilmember Costa. I'm doing that for you. So here's the thing. I'm gonna call that motion. I'm gonna call it that it's not germane to the original motion, and you can challenge the mayor, and then we'll take a vote on that. So
I'm appealing.
okay, so you can challenge the mayor. Okay, Deputy Mayor Marks, you take the chair, and I'll tell you my ruling of why I'm calling it out of order. This motion is out of order. First of all, you had already spoken on the motion. Second of all, you made a motion, and this motion is not germane to the original motion because it's to approve the motion, and one is to not, you're making the assumption that one's not approved. So what I'm ruling you out of order is on this amendment, and then you can bring another amendment after someone speaks on the motion that you've already spoken on. So that's the reason that I find my ruling. Go ahead, you get a chance to. No, this is just the appealer and I say why I'm appealing it, why I'm saying I'm denying it. The appealer gets to set their statement of why she believes she's right, and then the council votes on it, and then we move forward. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I spoke to the original motion, which was in order, and explained why I do not support it. And then I proposed an amendment to that motion. And I did not yet speak to that amendment. I mean, we can debate the semantics of whether it's speaking to it before or after, but given that my speaking to the motion beforehand was entirely relevant to the motion made, I think that I'm entitled to make a subsequent amendment at that time. I don't see any reason why I would not be allowed to. If our city attorney finds anything that clearly states that I am not allowed to make such an amendment, then I will defer to his knowledge, and I will vote down the original motion, and then I will make another motion if we need to. But until that time comes where I have been told specifically that my amendment is not permissible under our rules and operating guidelines, then I stand by what I have said, and I wait to see any basis to deny my motion to amend.
If I could, I think one of the things that's thrown me about this is the council has already adopted this particular motion. So now really this is a motion seeking to amend a previous decision. And I'm not sure, and I think that's the difficulty I'm having with the idea of essentially offering a substitute or an amendment to this amendment that essentially is asking for the original motion that's being brought into question to essentially be voted on again for a second time. So I certainly see that you can amend something that's previously been adopted, and it must be seconded, which has happened. It is debatable. It is amendable. And it's a majority vote in order for the adoption of the amendment of the previously adopted motion.
City attorney, that wasn't very clear.
Oh, I'm sorry. So this motion was originally considered at the last council meeting. The council adopted this resolution and it was put on the calendar today for your quote unquote second touch. Councilor Tosta is seeking to amend that motion or that resolution, frankly, that has already been adopted. And it appears under the rules that she can do that. I think the problem I'm having is that essentially Councilor Moore is seeking to offer an amendment that is essentially the vote that took place the last council meeting. And while I do see that there are amendments that are permissible, I've yet to come across something that kind of tells me one way or another if this is possible. And maybe I should be clear. In a technical sense, and I'm going to thank the clerk for this, Megan, technically you haven't actually adopted it until, I guess, you've actually adopted the consent agenda. So forgive me for that. Thank you, Megan, for pointing that out. I'm still looking because I haven't found anything that tells me that Councilor Moore can essentially do what she's done, which is to flip the motion in the opposite direction. I would just say one thing though, and I see that you want to speak, Deputy Mayor Marks. Whoever has the prevailing motion is going to need the majority vote in order to have their motion prevail. And right now you're sitting with 6 counselors.
Deputy Mayor, you're chairing this meeting. I handed the gavel over to you because I said my protest. More had to protest, and I'm appealing to the council.
Right. At this time, then, I would like to see if there's the will of the council to have a 10-minute recess to allow the city attorney to research this further so we don't continue the conversation. I'm noticing that it's starting to degrade into back and forth arguing, and I know that's not the image that we want to portray to our community and to each other, and we want to value our relationships. Is there a will for a 10-minute recess? You can signify by raising your hand if you are in favor. Okay, so we only have 3, so we're not going to move forward with that. Is there any further comment on this matter right now while we wait for the city attorney? If not, I do have a comment to make. Fantastic. City Manager Wilson, you can go ahead if you'd like.
Thank you. I'm going to turn my camera off. I'm having some internet issues today. I know that we have the city attorney researching this and the city clerk. One option that you might consider is to have a vote on the original motion that was made and then move forward from there.
I appreciate that, City Manager. I would like to give my comment at this time, and then I will definitely come back to you, City Attorney. I don't think it's going to change the course of where we're going to go with this. We did pass this for consent agenda. We moved to put on the consent agenda with a 5-2 vote. It is a little concerning to now then repeal it or to try to repeal or not pass that ordinance when we voted to pass it. It feels like it's not something we typically do with an ordinance to say, let's pass it. Actually, no, let's not, because the vote didn't go the way that we wanted it to go, potentially. So I have a concern with that. It sets a bad precedence. But if that's how council is moving this evening, then that's how council is moving. I want to go back to the city attorney. It looked like he had a eureka moment.
Thank you. I don't know so much about Eureka, but there is a particular area that discusses improper amendments. Did find that. And in particular, number 2 states that, well, let me just start. It says the following types of amendment are out of order. And then number 2, one that merely makes the adoption of the amended question equivalent to a rejection of the original motion. So I think that answers that question. I hope that that's definitive enough for the counselors, but that is literally word for word and this is Robert's Rules, 11th edition, page 138, if that is helpful for anyone.
City Attorney, can you read it one more time, please? I just want to make sure it's completely understood.
Sure. Improper amendments. The following types of amendment are out of order. And then number 2, one that merely makes the adoption of the amended question equivalent to a rejection of the original motion.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So based off of Robert's Rules, it does look like the amendment made to Councilmember Tosta's motion is out of order based on rules. So we are back now. I'm sorry, Councilmember Moore. We are back now to the original motion made by Councilmember Tosta, which was to not pass this ordinance. And there was still discussion being had on that. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Tosta.
Thank you. I think it's a resolution and not an ordinance.
Thank you.
Just to be clear. But I also wanted to point out, based on some of the subsequent comments, DESC has indicated they will build on this site, which I think is great. I mean, I have no objection to that. That's not what I am commenting on. The Affordable Housing Demonstration Project says that it will be serve the needs of the residents of Burien. So while we have the need for 440 units or whatever the number is in the 0 to 30, and this will provide 95 units, there was no guarantee, and I will go back to page 80 of our packet, that there is no guarantee that Burien residents will reside in these units. They are limited in terms of who can be there and who will be prioritized. DESC said that they would check to see if there were any King County documentation that says that it would serve our local needs. And as far as I know, that documentation has never been provided to us. That is one of my main concerns, that this does not, we have not been given assurance that this will serve those folks that are suffering homelessness in our community. And so I would like to see DESC build housing. Under our affordable housing project, it says it will be for the citizens of Burien. So that is one of the concerns I have. But I would also like, given where it is and the importance of our downtown core to our economy, I really would like to see DESC comply with the attributes that we need. I totally understand. I am a strong advocate for affordable housing. So I do want to see us look at what rules we have in place that
Councilmember
are
Costa.
impeding the ability to do that.
Forgive me. And when one counselor is speaking, the equivalent of standing, I guess, which under Robert's rules is what you're supposed to do, you're raising your hands. You can't do that while the other person, almost the entire time the person is speaking. That's the equivalent of like standing while they're standing and speaking. So let's, if we could, try not to do that.
Thank you, City Attorney. I appreciate that. I'll stop. Others do want a chance to speak.
Thank you, Councilmember Tosta. Councilmember Schilling, you haven't spoken yet on this.
Thank you. I seconded Councilmember Tosta's desire to do this because I think there's nothing wrong with continued conversation. I was hoping that we would be able to just have a continued thoughtful conversation about this. We've had a lot of community engagement around this topic. I think there's a lot of concern, not necessarily, I agree with Councilmember Tosta. I'm not anti having DESC be in Burien, but I think this project is so large and proposed for them. So it's so large and there's so many attributes about it within the downtown core. We are actually beholden to city codes, how we want the city to operate the way it should operate, what we think about density, how we think about environmental impact, size impact. These are all things we are supposed to think about. We are not supposed to just leave this up to property developers or property owners. We, as the elected council, should be having thoughtful conversations about those very things. I will just reiterate my comments from the first meeting on this. I think that because DESC is an organization capable of building and maintaining a property in accordance with our zoning and codes, they should. I think my opinion on the Affordable Housing Demonstration Program is that it is designed for organizations that could benefit from the sort of concessions being necessary for trying something different and new. Again, I'm not opposed to DESC as a community member of Burien, but I just think that our conversation that we should be having and continue to have, even with their presence here, is one of how to work to integrate and invite community cooperation. There were more follow-up questions that didn't have answers that we saw as a council over the last couple of weeks. They don't know what they're going to do about parking. They have 24/7 on-site employees, and their proposal only situates 3 parking spots. That's a parking impact. That's a parking impact where we don't have a lot of parking. I'm usually, I think we need to think about that. Additionally, we did receive information from DESC that according to similarly sized properties that they manage, there will be an increased call rate of public services to the facility. They said that to us. So there shouldn't be any debate about that. They literally emailed that to us themselves. And that's a conversation that we can have. I'm not saying that's a negative thing, because as Chief Bo also said earlier at this meeting, so does Navos. So do other organizations in Burien, and we are partners with them. So again, I'm in favor of DESC and Burien. I think they're capable of meeting our codes and zoning the way we ask other large property owners to do. And I think that's a win-win for us and DESC.
Councilmember Moore, I do see your hand. I want to double check and make sure Councilmember Aragon or Mayor Mata, who have not had an opportunity to speak yet, see if they either would like to speak. Councilmember Aragon.
Well, I think one of the challenges of this, and we've had many controversial issues, is our process is sort of one size fits all. So I do support the ability to have us have continued conversations on really complex issues. I think housing is a major angle of what DESC provides. But we also want to pay attention to impact on planning. And I think that there does need to be space to do that thoroughly. I don't doubt that there is a need. I know that there is research on the effectiveness of permanent supportive housing. It's out there. And again, I don't feel like this conversation is simply a yes or no on DESC. I think that this is a real curiosity and diligence about questions being raised. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure we vet all of those questions for those who have brought up some concerns, as well as just wanting to know more, which was also a number of questions that came forward to the council. So I think this is the time to do it.
All right, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. So I would again reiterate that I believe we have a representative from DESC present tonight. If anyone would like to ask further questions, I believe it's my understanding they are willing to speak to us to answer said questions. I also do want to address the point that we have had our planning commission review this and give a unanimous recommendation to approve this. So the matter of planning has been reviewed in depth, and we have had those we have tasked with giving us said recommendations, give us unanimous approval recommendation for this. It's not us jumping into this without consideration. I also want to address the point that was brought up that in regards to the parking issue, that they would have 22, 23 employees 24/7. That's not accurate. They have that many employees, but they are not saying they specifically will have that many employees on site 24/7 at all in times. And it's my understanding that's not the case. That's a total of employees. So we're not saying there's going to be 20 some odd extra people parking in this area at all times. And they have also specifically stated the tenants in this building do not own vehicles. The employees are given free bus passes, free Metro Transit passes to enable them to commute to work. And I think that not only is this great because they're supporting their employees in transportation, but it's also actively encouraging their employees to use a more eco-friendly version of transportation and supporting our public transit system, which is amazing. And we should definitely be in support of any business that does that in the city of Burien, because we want to be a green city, right? So in regards to the parking issue, I don't see it as an issue. It has been addressed. We have a planning commission who has approved, who has recommended approval of this unanimously. We have a business that is giving out free bus passes and Metro Transit passes to their employees, which is phenomenal. Actively encouraging their employees and residents to use transit instead of cars. And when it comes to whether or not they will only house Burien residents, people who currently live in Burien, well, we don't ask that of any development, not one. There is not a single housing development, whether in this program or private development or anything, where we ask and demand that every person in that building come specifically from Burien. And what would be the timeline there? Would they have to have lived here for 6 months, 6 years, 60 years? What's the guideline there? And so it seems discriminatory to me for us to place that specific limitation or burden on this development project without ever having considered that even in other projects proposed for our affordable housing demonstration program. That's never been mentioned, not ever. And I feel like even if there were an instance where we had some people who found homes here in Burien, who came from somewhere else, and were able to find a permanent home here in Burien alongside the rest of our residents that come from here, that live in this building, is it so bad that we should give some people outside of Burien stable homes that they can live in and age in place for the rest of their lives? We welcome people to Burien all the time. Are we going to discriminate because somebody has a disability and say, we don't want you here? You're not from Burien, so you don't deserve to live here. I don't think that's the kind of message that our council should send. I don't think that's the kind of message our city should send. And I certainly, once again, would reiterate, I do not want to discourage other developers who would be interested in taking part of our affordable housing demonstration program by showing that even if you jump through all the hoops and meet all of our qualifying standards and do all the process that we have required you to do to meet our standards for approval, we'll still deny you with no basis that we can pinpoint, that we have specified that you can meet a standard by. So I hope we take that into consideration, because this is sending a clear message, not just to the members of our community who have concerns, but to the people who, like I said, the people who can't be here tonight for one reason or another to speak and defend themselves and advocate for themselves, sending a message to developers who could create affordable housing for all kinds of wage groups, whether it's 0 to 30% AMI or higher, any kind. It's sending a clear message. And I don't think that Burien wants to be a city that paints itself as unwelcoming, who paints itself as disregarding the needs of our people. And another thing, the deviations from our current codes that they have asked for, they have specified some of those are a safety issue. And they are asking for those deviations specifically to make this housing safer for people with disabilities. And so if they're going to build, whether we approve or not, and they're telling us we would make things safer by giving approval and approving these deviations, the question before us is, do we want safer housing or less safe housing? And I have a very clear opinion on that, and I hope the rest of my fellow council members will take that into consideration when making their decisions as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. While I have the privilege of chairing the meeting, I would like to ask all of our fellow council members to remember our agreement to treat each other with respect, even in that respect of time as well. Even though I agree with the comments that are being put forward, I want to make sure that we maintain this good morale that we're trying really hard to build. Want to check in with Mayor Mata on any opportunity to give a comment.
Well, there's no question that this DESC, whether you're for it or against, I got to tell you, I support the DESC. But here's what I'm concerned about. I've had those conversations with business. I've asked business if they come out and do a field trip. I went out there and I've spoken to businesses out in the area. From 0 to 30, there is no housing there. But here's what I agree about what's going on in our political system across the country, locally, is that we're fast. And I know that business has to move because money moves. But I just I felt that there wasn't enough meetings with some of the smaller businesses. I got to tell you that tonight, in saying this, is the DESC, and like I've talked to some of the businesses, we need a DESC here in Burien. We need services. There's some people that are affected by mental health downtown. It's not that there's some that are criminals, and law enforcement, you heard them, but there's some that are suffering from severe mental health. And so here is what I think that I'd like to see is more dialogue here. I don't think the question is, and I don't know if the demonstration program is something that's going to go away. I think that if we do it in a month, in 2 weeks, in 1 week, in a month, I think that I'd like to see the other council members here because I do think that this is an important conversation to have. I do want to see if we can at least get businesses to go out to the DESC and check it out. there's a lot of fear that I think that on both ends. We want the homeless, or yes, we do. I don't think it's whether we want or not. I mean, when we talked about our moral compass and where's our empathy, this is a project for empathy and moral compass. The question here is now this is more for city manager. My understanding is that at least what I read is parking, they still have to go through design of parking. They still have to meet the building codes. And so I think here where there's this severe disagreement is, why are we letting this be part of the demonstration programs? And are they getting a deal that they wouldn't be getting any other way? And I think what we heard from public comment is saying, well, that's what DESC said, which I don't agree. I mean, I think that parking is going to be an issue. And so I wanted to, I know I asked that question. I had a response, city manager, and the response was that this building still has to go through processes before it even gets built. It could still be denied as a council. Is that correct, or is that my misinformed there?
So the decision before the council tonight on the consent agenda is whether to accept this project from DESC as a housing development demonstration project. Does it meet those criteria for that project? If council takes that position in the affirmative, which then we would, as a staff, would go through the administrative requirements to review the parking, to review the design, to review, going through that process under this program that's been approved by council. So that's the decision that's before council tonight.
Does anyone, all right, seeing, so, Councilmember Tosta, you can go ahead.
If we delay this decision tonight, that we don't put it on the consent agenda, and there is further discussion with businesses, opportunities for other visits, can we revisit this as to whether this does qualify? And if DESC is able to answer some of the questions, and we have asked them in emails and they've referred to some of them in this document, can we revisit this? I guess that's a question for you, Brian.
So it could be moved to May 3rd for a decision, similar, just no decision tonight on a second reading of this, but the second reading could be moved to May 3rd. And then during that time period, if there was additional visitations of business or of the DESC project, we could bring this back with council direction to come back on May 3rd as a second touch to the motion, or to what passed or was presented at the last meeting, which is that this project is approved by council to be considered an affordable housing demonstration project, meeting the 0 to 30 AMI project.
And I'd like to take this opportunity just to point out that I do think our process here could use some improvement, because I know that the DESC has done a ton of work. And this is a reference to Councilmember Aragon's earlier comment about how much discussion, particularly a project of this scope in this location, needs in terms of input. And it's not just 2 community meetings, and it's not just sort of shepherding it through the Planning Commission, because the Planning Commission doesn't speak for the constituents in the community. We are elected to speak for those constituents. And it was only honestly when it's come to be visible before us that I think more and more people started paying attention to it. And so I think our process, we need to take another look at our affordable housing process here to say earlier in the process, we need some prelude, some introduction to what some of these things might be. And I realized, Brian, you had included it in your reports, but it was kind of a high-level cursory reference to a potential project. It was never the level of detail that I think this deserves, because I don't want to see someone doing a tremendous amount of work and then it gets to this point where we're being forced to make a fairly quick decision. So just an observation that before, if there are others in the pipeline, we ought to be hearing about them sooner rather than later.
So as someone, sorry, Councilmember Toss, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
I'm sorry. And I would be willing, I made the motion that we not approve this, but it was that we not approve it for I am willing to, I guess, well, the council now owns that motion, so it's not for me to withdraw, but I would be willing to consider some additional time to allow investigation with our businesses, with getting other questions asked to defer this decision.
Right. Let's go with Councilmember Schilling.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to follow up and say, I think that is prudent. And I think that it would make sense for one of the points I brought up when we had this in front of us a few weeks ago to DESC, which was if they would be willing to accept suggested changes from the community. And they said yes. So I think we should take them up on that and actually make this a pretty community-driven discussion around what we can do together. So I would support the suggestion from the city manager as well.
Okay. Mayor Mata.
I make an amendment to the motion. Hold on. Go ahead, city attorney.
Okay, just because there was a statement that there couldn't be a motion or a request for permission to withdraw. And under Robert's rules, you can make that request. So I'm not suggesting it. I don't want to go that far, but I just want to make sure the council's aware of what its options are and it proceeds as it chooses.
So Mayor Mata, if you could hold 1 second, let's check in with Councilmember Tosta. Would you like to withdraw your motion?
I will withdraw my motion. And depending on the motion that Mayor Mata makes, I may make a different one, but I will withdraw my motion. And I believe that Councilmember Schilling also has to agree to that.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so the motion has been withdrawn. Mayor Mata, are you still looking to make a motion at this time?
Well, I was going to make a motion that May 17th, that this be brought to the council.
Second.
Okay. So moved and seconded. Mayor Mata, want to speak to your motion?
I just believe that, I think more conversation needs to be had. We have, this is I already know what I want to see downtown is help for people that are suffering mental health. But I think it deserves more conversation. I think we can bring it back as a second touch May 17th.
Thank you, Mayor Mata. Would anyone else like to speak on this motion? Councilmember Aragon.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Marks. And this is really, I just wanted to state that one of the things that I'm interested in learning about is that I know that 0 to 30% AMI is a significant investment, and that we are supporting people who are limited in their ability to earn incomes. So what I would like to understand is, and so there's this notion of a facility can exist either in housing demonstration or through the regular permitting process. And what I'm interested in is sort of the pros and cons economically to that to DESC, because I know that organizations like that, to do their service, this is an investment that really relies on discounts of any kind. Like, for example, if they go through this project, what kind of discounts that creates. I know there's a reliance on federal funds, for example. So all of that, I think, would be really helpful when we revisit this again. And also one more thing, I'm sorry, that I think there were some questions raised about us as a council really understanding the process moving forward. So yay, we could vote on, yes, it fits under the rubric of the affordable housing, but then what's next? What are those touch points, and what what are we able to check back on in terms of progress so that we avoid further roadblocks before things get far down the road? So I think those are the things that we need to understand.
Thank you, Councilmember Aragon. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? If not, I will do so. Okay. I am in favor of moving this to May 17th because we are missing a council member who I know is very invested in this conversation as well. And I think that he deserves to have an opportunity to weigh in on this conversation as someone who initially was a part of it. I am not convinced that having businesses tour a facility or learn more about or visit the facility, I guess I'll just leave it at that, an existing DSC facility will help change any minds, not because the facilities aren't wonderful. We heard from someone who lives across the street from one of our own staff who feels perfectly safe. We've heard from Seattle Southside who in one of the meetings with DESC mentioned they talked to businesses near a DESC facility and they had no idea that they were near a permanent supportive housing facility. That's not my thought process. I think until there's an understanding of the need of regional permanent supportive housing within South King County, that the opinions are not necessarily going to change. I do appreciate Councilmember Aragon's request to really hear more about the economic impacts, and I'm hoping that the DEC staff that are present, if this motion does get passed, will bring that information back in a month's time if this does get onto the May 17th agenda. This is something, and this is the final piece that I will say, permanent supportive housing, even if the folks going into the DESC facility are not currently from Burien, if they didn't grow up here or they didn't become homeless here, if they come from anywhere else in King County, it is a pressure relief valve on the rest of the system, freeing up bed space in other shelters, freeing up space throughout the rest of the county to allow folks to access services that are more appropriate for them. And by us not participating in this potentially, by putting it forward and allowing the most number of beds possible, I see that as very different from the message that we're putting forward when we say we support SKIP, the Seattle King County or Seattle King Housing and Homelessness Partners, that we support a regional solution to homelessness. So I think where there is some internal work to do, encourage fellow council members as well to read about what the Affordable Housing Demonstration Program is in the meantime while we wait for more information. So I will be a yes vote on this motion, primarily so Councilmember Olguin can also be a part of the conversation and we have a chance for our community on either side of the issue to speak up even more. So we now have Councilmember Moore wishing to give a comment.
Thank you. So I am not in favor of postponing this vote. I think we have had extensive conversation with our community and with council, with DESC representatives, from people who work with the population this project would serve directly. But I do greatly respect what Deputy Mayor Marks mentioned about allowing our fellow council member to have the opportunity to weigh in on this subject matter, because I do believe they do take great interest in this matter. And so I am okay with postponing to allow our fellow council member to have a say in such an important matter. I would like to propose an amendment though, because City Manager Wilson specified May 3rd as a preferable date to move this conversation to. I would like to amend the motion to add this to the agenda on May 3rd, as City Manager Wilson had suggested that we do.
There's been an amendment made to the motion to make the date May 3rd instead of May 17th. Is there a second to that amendment? Checking in with the city attorney, as I am acting chair in this meeting, am I allowed to second a motion?
And what an evening this has been. Give me a second to make sure, just to not make a mistake on this. Give me a moment, please. Sorry.
Thank you. Councilmember Toss, I think it is yes, I'm agreeing with you, but I just want to make sure so we're not out of order.
City Attorney, to spare your eyes, I will second her amendment. And so we can get moving with this meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Mata. All right, it has been moved and seconded to move the date, to change the date from May 17th to May 3rd for staff to bring this back on the next agenda. All those in favor of this amendment, please raise your hand or your sign signifying aye. That is 3. All those opposed, please raise your hand. That is 3. All right, so it is a tied motion on a 6-person council. That motion does not, or the amendment does not pass. Back to the original motion of bringing this item forward again at the May 17th council agenda. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Can I speak on that?
Oh, go ahead, Mayor Mata.
I just want to let community here know and business know, I know everybody that wants to put input on this, whether you're for it or against it. Look, this is coming back to this council on May 17th. Get out there, organize, get your questions asked, go out and visit the facility, DESC, and for those individuals that are for it, get out there and organize. I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is what democracy is all about, is being able to go out there and hear your voices heard. So this council here is open to hearing you, how you believe, but we may not agree, and that's okay. But I think this is giving time that come May 17th, there is not going to be, I didn't have a chance to ask that question, and so look, I'm here I'm here at least as a council member, and the other council member can speak for themselves, but I know that this is a near and dear issue to themselves. They look at it, whether for it, against it, but regardless, send us information, send us your comments. I have been reading your comments, and I thank you for those that are pro and those that are against, or those that don't know. But come May 17th, we need to make sure that whether we're building it under the program or we're not building it under the program. So I look forward to seeing your emails, your phone calls, your meetings. I've met with a lot of you, and so don't get this that I'm for or against. I'm for whatever is going to make sure that we take care of our vulnerable people in Burien, for those individuals that don't have a voice. So this is only until 17th. Let's get these questions in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tosta.
Just along the lines of that thinking of getting our questions in, I feel like we do need to do that sooner rather than later, whether we get them into you, Brian, or we get them into DESC. But I think Councilmember Aragon has brought some up. I also wonder if we could have some analysis of what the economic impact to the community really would be. I mean, what are DESC's impacts if they build it under the affordable housing pilot, or if they build it just as a building under our normal codes? I think that's a great question. I would just like to know what the potential cost is to the city of Burien from the perspective of lost taxes or revenue or potential emergency response services. And those are just 2 variables, but there may be more, because I think it is our responsibility to understand what this DESC is talking about, bringing lots of money in, and I think that's fabulous, and it does take that kind of money to build 0 to 30 housing, but we are not a wealthy city, and so this is going to have some impact to us in our budget, and I think it's worth our knowing that.
Thank you, Councilmember Tosta. City Manager Wilson, I saw you turn off your camera. Are you hoping to make a comment?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Marks. I just wanted to say we have a lot of this information that's been talked about tonight, and we'll make sure that it's available to council, and we'll get it out as soon as possible. Some has already been out, but I would encourage the public and certainly council, if there are any questions that like specific answers other than what's been discussed tonight, please forward that information to me, and I'll make sure that it gets answered.
Thank you, City Manager. Any further comments on this motion? All right. Councilmember Schilling.
Chair Marks, I don't know how to address you right now. I think there's no motion right now.
There is a motion on the floor or on the table right now to bring this back to us on May 17th.
Okay, and was that seconded by me?
I believe that was you, but we can double check with City Clerk.
No, that's fine. I was just going to call the vote. I was just going to call the question. I move to call the question.
Okay, so that calling the question does stop all debate, and we do need to vote on that to call the question. All those in favor of ending debate at this time, please raise your hand or your sign signifying yes. That is the majority of a 6-person council. That was in favor was Councilmember Aragon, Councilmember Tosta, Councilmember Schilling, and Mayor Mata. Those opposed is Councilmember Moore and myself, Deputy Mayor Marks. So that stops all debate on this item. And so we are now going to vote on the motion that is unamended on the floor right now, which is for staff to bring this back in on our May 17th agenda. All those in favor, please
I'm
raise your
sorry,
hand.
Deputy Mayor Marks, I'm so sorry for asking for clarification. That is to the business agenda, correct?
Let's verify. It looks like we're seeing yes. Is that the intent? It is to the business agenda.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand or your sign signifying aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much.